First of all, we have not talked about how the opening titles have been changing the past few episodes. Like we discussed before, the opening titles show the Targaryen bloodlines flowing through a model of Old Valyria. Each sigil on this opening represents a person from House Targaryen or one of the houses they married into. But her sigil still flows into his twin girls, Baela and Rhaena. Just as the classic Game of Thrones credits showed us what parts of Westeros we were going to see, so Daemon, Rhaenyra, and their children don't show up in this episode's credits. Right here we can see the sigil of Viserys being covered in blood after his death. And in the background here we see Rhaenyra because she is in the background of the story. She is someone who is referenced. A big new change is Viserys' blood flowing into Alicent's sigil, but then we see the 4 bloodlines representing Alicent's children. Helaena is the insect because she has an affinity for bugs. Aegon has what I think is a female figure because I'm guessing he likes to whore around. Aemond is a sapphire. Aegon and Helaena both flow into their twins, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, and their third kid, Maelor. Now the camera quickly moves past Rhaenyra's sigil, which is the Valyrian steel necklace that Daemon gave her. I think this is him here because the next blood flows are the 2 kids that he has with Rhaenyra, Aegon the Younger and Viserys, underscoring shots of an empty King's Landing. And it makes the music feel empty, kind of like the place that we're looking at. We start on a shot of the empty Iron Throne. The king is dead and this empty chair needs to be filled. Last day this throne ever existed. We also see this empty courtyard. Cersei will one day create her war map of Westeros in this same courtyard. Now remember this courtyard because it's a location that shows the progress of the Green Council's takeover of King's Landing. The small council chamber room is also empty with Chekhov's attendance balls in the middle of the table. Back to the Easter eggs. Now in past episodes these balls have been used to give subtle hints about like Alicent's ball is green. So the blacks are people at court who side with Rhaenyra because the traditional Targaryen colors are red and black. But the greens are the people at court who side with Alicent because remember, she wore a green dress to Rhaenyra's wedding feast, and green is the color the Hightowers use to call their banners to war. Alicent wears the green dress to a party celebrating her 5-year anniversary with Viserys. Now normally a woman would wear the colors of her husband's house, so this was seen as her asserting the authority of Hightowers over the court of King's Landing. Jasper Wilde, the Master of Laws, wearing dark green. The window here is left open, implying that one of the 7 gods was allowed in to claim the life of Viserys. We also see the stairs where Rhaenyra was forced to endure a several-minute tracking shot moments after giving birth. Something ominous is building up in King's Landing. And then a boy crosses the future map of the courtyard, and on these stairs he walks by a dragon torch. Robert Baratheon would have ordered them all removed.
Kill every Targaryen I get my hands on.
This boy is more than likely one of Viserys' servants who discovered his body, and he tells the news to Alicent's handmaiden Talia, who we first saw here. Talia not now. Informant for Daemon's former mistress, Mysaria, aka the Queen of Whispers, aka the White Worm. Now we're going to talk a lot more about her in a bit. When Alicent hears about Viserys, it breaks her. She genuinely came to love the man, but not only that, she actually cared for him as his body disintegrated. But she was also a companion to the old king from the prologue. This was hard for her. Now the first person she tells is her dad, the Hand of the King. And indeed truly misinterpret Viserys' last words.
He told me you wish for Aegon to be king.
Viserys was higher than a cat's back on Milk of the Poppy and thought that he was talking to Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy. Or maybe she chose not to realize this. Then she can justify making her son king. Either way, Alicent is an idiot. She's a kind-hearted idiot, but a woman who has a lot of hang-ups, but I do like this motivation that they've given her. In the book, Rhaenyra and Alicent are portrayed as, I guess, a little more power-hungry, but in the show, we see that they genuinely believe that they are doing the right thing. Alicent wants to follow her husband's final wishes, and Rhaenyra wants to fulfill Aegon's prophecy. Otto doesn't really care if Aegon being crowned was Viserys' last wish, but he's really happy to take advantage of Alicent's naivete. So next, Talia lights candles in a window, probably a kind of code to Mysaria. The book calls the Green Council, and that's also the title of this episode. This is the meeting where the small council plots to steal Rhaenyra's crown. Now, we have the aforementioned Jasper Wilde, Master of Laws, Master of Ships, Tywin Lannister. He's probably Team Green because Rhaenyra spurned his douchey twin brother, Jason, a few episodes ago.
This is why men wage war, because a woman would never be ready for the battle in time.
And Tyland is also the ancestor of Tyrion Lannister from Classic Thrones.
I drink, and I know things.
Now, Jason and Tyland are twins, and twins keep popping up in this series. Daemon and Laena have twin girls. Helaena and Aegon have twins as well, and a large part of the episode features twin brothers Eric with an A and Eric with an E, Cargyle. It is essentially about twin claims to the Iron Throne, so we're seeing a recurring theme of 2. The series prologue begins with 2 claims to the Iron Throne. There are 2 Aegons. Rhaenyra and Laenor lead double lives, and the Dance of the Dragons is splitting the realm in 2. This is Grand Maester Ali and finally we have the Master of Coin, Lyman Beesbury. He's the only member of the council on Rhaenyra's side, and notice he is wearing black. After Viserys' death is announced, Tywin Lannister drops this nefarious line.
We may proceed now with the full assurance of his blessing on our long-laid plans.
Again, the book makes it seem like Alicent led this charge, and here we see that this was actually all kept a secret from her. Otto then talks about the Gold Cloaks that they control. Now, the Gold Cloaks are the City Watch, basically the police of King's Landing. You'll remember that Daemon was the leader of the Gold Cloaks in the first episode. In fact, the Gold Cloaks they wear was actually his idea, and the men of the City Watch are fiercely loyal to him. Otto is saying that Daemon still has some friends among the local cops, and that they want to weed them out. The Gold Cloaks are also a lot rowdier than the Kingsguard. They don't have to take vows of celibacy, they can be baseborn, and the pay is a lot less. Now, like I said, Lord Beesbury is the Master of Coin. Highland announces,
The treasury is well in hand. The gold will be divided for safekeeping.
so, to keep the treasury safe and away from Rhaenyra, Tyland has split it between 4 places: the Iron Bank in Bravos, the Vaults of Casterly Rock, Old Town, and King's Landing. And they did all of this without the knowledge of the Master of Coin. Tyland's title is Master of Ships, and because he could secretly move this gold to all these different cities, which are all on major ports. Now, in the book, no one really knows how Beesbury died. There are even accounts that he was sent to the dungeon and lived out his days there. But here we see that he was actually killed by his work.
I will have no part.
Criston Cole killed Beesbury because he essentially accused Alicent of treason. He seems to have transferred his feelings for Rhaenyra to Alicent.
Everything you feel for me is your queen.
But this unrequited love is a much better fit for Sir Criston because it allows both him and Alicent to have feelings for one another while remaining chaste and pure. And then Harold Westerling, commander of the Kingsguard, draws against Sir Criston, and notice how Tywin just immediately gets the F out of the way between them. He's truly the ancestor of Tywin Lannister, the guy who always knows how to pick the best side and avoid danger. Westerling keeps his honor and refuses to be an assassin for Otto. He hands in his white cloak, and I have a suspicion that he will sneak off to join Rhaenyra. This is Barristan Selmy.
I am a knight. I shall die a knight.
Remember Westerling for later. So, as they plot to take over the kingdom, Beesbury's blood starts to pool on the small council table. The opening credits focus on bloodlines, blood spilled by the struggle to have power over those same bloodlines.
Storm's End is of concern. We may not assume the loyalty of Lord Boris, but he has 4 daughters.
Most of the Baratheons are the same, kind of like Robert Baratheon in Classic Thrones. They're loud, stubborn, violent, and always up for a rowdy time. Boromon, this guy who offered Rhaenys his favor in episode 1, cousin of Rhaenys. Like Robert said,
I'll kill every Targaryen I get my hands on.
during Aegon's conquest, the Baratheons at Storm's End were one of the first great houses to declare for Aegon, back to before Aegon, and that would be Aegon Targaryen. After Robert's rebellion, this Targaryen lineage is how his allies justified Robert replacing a Targaryen king. So, they're right to be worried about the loyalties of House Baratheon. They're stubborn and they've already declared for Rhaenyra. They were also one of the few great houses to vote for Rhaenys to be queen at that great council from the prologue. So they would actually have no problem with a woman like Rhaenyra being queen. Storm's End is also very close to King's Landing, which would give Rhaenyra a strategic location on the other side of King's Landing, so the city would be trapped between Storm's End and her seat at Dragonstone. And we actually saw Storm's End a few episodes ago when Rhaenyra cut short her tour by a couple months because she had the hots for her uncle. Next, Alicent goes to see her daughter Helena, who is basically spoiling this entire show for everyone. Helena seems to have the gift of green sight, or prophecy, to Aegon the Conqueror. She predicted that Aemon would lose an eye to get a dragon,
You'll have to close an eye. Spoon of green, spoon of black. Dragons.
which foreshadowed the war against the Greens and the Blacks.
There is a beast beneath the bones.
She is predicting the end of the episode, when Rhaenys brings her dragon out from beneath the dragon pit. She's making a needlepoint of her favorite animal, an insect. Now, it's common for noble ladies to fill their time with craft projects like this, and Sansa Stark was always very good at them.
I work as always.
Her twins on the ground are playing with 2 dragons, and these candle holders are shaped like the 7-pointed star of the 7 gods. So then, the great hunt for Aegon II begins. In the book, there are different accounts of where he was. The Green supporter said that he was in the arms of a noblewoman, while most accounts say that he was up to activities that were far more depraved. Otto sends twin knights to the Kingsguard, Sir Eric and Eric, to go find him.
Whatever it is, Sir Eric, you need to wait.
I'm Eric, Your Grace.
Of course.
As you can see in this episode, the 2 of them are on the fence with their loyalties. It seems like Sir Eric is definitely Team Black. He helps Rhaenys escape the castle and has a personal disdain for Aegon. Meanwhile, Alicent is sending Criston Cole and Aemon to find her son.
Aegon must be found, and he must be brought to me.
Because if Otto finds Aegon, then he will order the deaths of Rhaenyra and her children. But If Alicent finds him, then she will ask Rhaenyra to surrender her crown peacefully. Now, Aemond is going to be one of the most important characters in this series, and it's telling that he is a second son in a show that is being shaped by second sons. Well, a second son does not inherit title or any lands, so they're always more ambitious, and thus they make for more interesting stories. A second son wants to disrupt the status quo. Otto is the second son who was goaded into action by his older brother. Daemon is a second son who never had a place at court, so he became a warrior. We even see Daemon like this with his two daughters. Rhaena was born a few minutes later, but she is the daughter that Daemon favors less because her egg won't even hatch. Now, until today, Aemond wasn't even second in line for the throne. He was 8th in line, but now we find out just how ambitious he is.
It is I who trains with the sword, who rides the largest dragon in the world. It is I who should be...
That's what Aemond wants, but also to give him common ground with Criston Cole.
I know what it is to toil for what others are freely given.
Remember, Criston Cole is not really of noble blood, and he had to literally fight to earn a place on the Kingsguard when Otto wanted to choose someone of a noble house. Criston's lack of pedigree is also why Rhaenyra rejected his wedding proposal.
It is my duty to marry a nobleman from a great house.
Meanwhile, Otto has ordered that Rhaenys be locked up in her room. She was still on Driftmark during the Green Council, but now she's in King's Landing because in the last episode, they were appealing the succession of her husband's seat. Now they're holding Rhaenys because they're not sure whose side she'll take. Last episode, she was blaming Rhaenyra for her son's death.
Yet you did worse than that with Laenor.
But she was also wearing black. She just resents being locked up and doesn't seem to have much of a dog in this fight. Teeth filed down child. 20 years earlier, she had the better claim to the Iron Throne.
The Iron Throne was yours by blood and by temperament.
But her father, Jaehaerys, rather than name her heir, decided to let the male lords and scholars of Westeros decide the succession at the Great Council. Only two were taken seriously, Rhaenys and Viserys. It is said that the lords of Westeros voted 20-1 in Viserys' favor. So now, Otto is trying to secure the loyalty of the people who voted for Viserys. And he's trying to minimize the people who voted for Rhaenys. Otto sees them as potential allies for Rhaenyra. We see Otto drafting tiny scrolls that he will send with ravens to all the great houses. And Greyjoy, aka the Red Kraken, on Pike. He just assumes that Rhaenys will declare for her niece, and her husband the Sea Snake commands the largest fleet in the kingdom. So he wants to secure the ships of the Iron Fleet. Unlike Dany, he won't forget about them.
Well, Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces.
Loyalty of most of the eastern lands, including the island of Evenfall, as in Brienne of Tarth.
The ravens came in from...
Evenfall, princess.
Rhaenyra also won the support of the Starks, but the north is so far away that it probably won't matter much in the war. But we do see Otto testing the loyalties of various lords in this episode. This guy, who initially declines to break his vow, is Lord Merryweather, and the king under Aerys Targaryen II, the Mad King. Aerys ends up banishing him and installing Tywin Lannister. Tywin turned on Aerys and helped install Robert Baratheon as king in Robert's Rebellion. So, well done, Merryweather. Your house's greatest contribution to history is its absence. But
House keeps its sworn oath to the princess.
again, you can see how the Greens are going to have trouble winning the loyalty of the Baratheon house. And the bald guy here who pretends to bend the knee to Aegon is Lord Caswell. Remember, he was the first person to congratulate Rhaenyra on her child, and the only person to greet her upon her arrival last episode. He ends up being hanged in the same square where Cersei painted her map of the Seven Kingdoms, about the Iron Throne Room. The columns feature relief sculptures, probably depicting Aegon's conquest. So in the original series, they're actually covered with carvings of vines. Meanwhile, Larys is trying to clamp down on the spy network of the White Worm. Larys is another second son, someone whose lack of title led him into cruelty and ambition, the Littlefinger of the show, but he locks up servants he suspects of being spies, so they can't spread the word of Viserys' death. Now, that's disgusting! So, to find Aegon, Aemon takes Criston Cole to the Street of Silk, and they're wearing disguises, much like Daemon and Rhaenyra when they visited this exact same location in Episode 3.
Every woman is an image of the mother, to be spoken of with reverence.
Oh my god, Criston Cole and Alicent were made for each other, man. They're both people who hide behind their religions to justify not taking what they actually want in life. And, as we see later in the episode, Alicent is extremely sexually repressed.
I'll have no thought!
Let's say they find out that Aegon is way more depraved than they thought, and he has to get his jollies in other ways. This madam here, she totally punched Aemon's V-card, right?
How you grow?
Boy fights. They sharpen the teeth of these kids and grow out their nails and make them fight like abused dogs. This truly shocks Sir Eric, and he uses the event to try to persuade his brother to switch sides.
Aegon spends many a night in this place. You see now what he is.
We even see a kid with bleach blonde hair. So this SOB likes to breed his own sons and then enter them into these fights so he can bet on them. In fact, we do get several indications that Aegon will be another Joffrey. He relishes in praise, he's emotionally unstable, and he delights in being cruel. So, after several days or hours go by, they finally dispose of Viserys' body. The women wrapping him up are the Silent Sisters, an order of the church that follows the god the Stranger. Now, we saw the sisters in the last episode wrapping up Vaemon's corpse, and they appeared all the way back in the Game of Thrones' very first pilot episode. One key thing to notice here is that Viserys' crown is placed on his body. Now, later, they're going to crown Aegon with the crown of Aegon the Conqueror. Now, when Jaehaerys became king, he wanted to put that crown in storage and had a new one made. Viserys' crown is actually the same one that was worn by his grandfather Jaehaerys. Stefflin Darkland steals this crown and takes it to Rhaenyra on Dragonstone, Harold Westerling, who walked away from the Kingsguard.
I recognize no authority but the king's, and until there is one, I have no place here.
Rhaenys and Alicent, and it really cuts to the heart of these women who are driving the action in the show.
You should have been queen.
And Alicent has been forced to accept that in Westeros, women can never have real agency. After all, she spent her entire life being the brood sow of a king.
We do not rule, but we may guide the men that do. Gently, content to hunt and study his histories.
Viserys always seemed more interested in building up his model of old Valyria, a dead kingdom. Alicent tempts Rhaenys by saying that her granddaughter could be made the heir of Driftmark like she wanted.
If it's Driftmark you want, you shall have it. For you and your granddaughters to pass on as you see fit.
To create a future where her granddaughters aren't denied power like she was. Alicent is trying to win her over because she's worried about her allegiance, and especially about her dragon, Melis, also known as the Red Queen. But Rhaenys understands that Alicent is actually asking her to be a doormat for a man for her entire life.
You desire not to be free, but to make a window in the wall of your prison.
This is actually a neat visual callback to this shot from last episode, where a chair in the foreground makes it look like Alicent is behind bars. Now, this conversation really gets to Alicent in ways that are going to pay off a bit later. So, Otto finally meets Mysaria face to face. She's been secretly informing him for years. Remember, she was the one who spread word of Rhaenyra and Daemon's dalliances on the Street of Silk. Now, it turns out she's even more ambitious than we thought. She's basically kidnapped Aegon and is holding him hostage for a promise to end the boy fights. So, Mysaria is very much like Varys from Classic Thrones, who is also known as the Spider or the Master of Whispers.
Children are blameless.
She leads the twins to find Aegon in the Great Sept. Now, this is not the Sept of Baelor, which we saw in Game of Thrones. This is the Great Sept that was replaced by the Sept of Baelor. Aegon is really against the idea of being king, as
He moved to cut off any challenge to her succession.
Then I won't.
You are the challenge!
they either want the crown too much or too little.
I don't want it.
There's a scuffle, and Alicent ends up with control over Aegon, and she does not wait to lord this over her dad, to try to prove to herself that she is actually the one who has power. Like I said, Rhaenys really got to her.
I see that now. Rather, I've been at peace that you moved about the board.
Even though that's exactly what she's doing to her own son, Aegon.
You look so much like your mother in certain lights.
So what he's saying here is, you are like your mother, soft and weak, so don't... And then we go to this creepy meeting between Larys and Alicent. Right away, we know something's up when Alicent starts to take off her shoes and stockings. And we see this close-up of the beetle on Larys' cane. Remember, we saw this same sigil on the prisoners that he hired to burn down Harrenhal, thereby killing his father and brother. And Helena is also knitting up. It's going to be a heck of an Easter egg, and I'm telling you, that whole under-the-boards prophecy thing. Larys has the title of Lord Confessor, basically the lead torturer. He wants Alicent's go-ahead to remove the rival spy network of Mysaria, that's the White Worm. And to pay Larys back for his efforts, she displays her feet so he can... Larys had more of a foot fetish than he would have directed Pulp Fiction. So I guess this is because his foot's disabled, but also it's like part of this weird... Basically, Alicent has never been pleasured by a man, so she thinks this is how it's done. Well, I think that Larys actually is the one who's running the boy fights, and he was using them to gain some kind of control or manipulation over powerful people like Prince Aegon. Now, since Mysaria wants to end the boy fights, Larys wants her out of the picture. Meanwhile, Sir Eric rescues Rhaenys and takes her through the secret passages past the skull of Balerion the Black Dread. Now, this was the dragon of Aegon the Conqueror, and Viserys, and later Cersei will do this to the skull. This is where Viserys told Rhaenyra about Aegon's prophecy, and just a couple episodes later, we saw a rat perched on this skull, symbolizing the eyes that watched her on the Street of Silk, and the eyes of the people who are eating away at the Targaryen dynasty. Or you know what, maybe Larys is a warg and he's inside of these rats watching everyone and munching on some tasty, tasty blood after the wedding. Nom 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 nom. Then we see a hooded figure walking away from Myssaria's burning home. But I doubt if Mysaria is really dead. All the small folk of the city are being forced into the dragon pit for Aegon's coronation, and they're being driven forward like sheep. Rhaenys is worried about being pulled away from the Kingsway until she realizes that the crowd is taking her straight to her dragon, the Red Queen. At the coronation, we see this scroll, which is a prayer to the Seven, which Alicent then shares a carriage with Aegon. Now, it's the same carriage that she shared with him years ago when he was a baby, back in episode 2. In that scene, a young Rhaenyra was mad at her father because she assumed that her dad would love Aegon more because he was a boy. And now, here is Aegon all grown and assuming that his dad loved Rhaenyra more, and that is why she made him heir. She passes on Aegon's dagger, saying that Viserys wanted him to have it. And this is actually the moment when the Targaryen dynasty begins to fall apart, and to destroy the ice zombies and end the long night. This dagger is a symbol of that secret passed down from king to heir. And now, that chain is broken. Or what a Targaryen king's true purpose is. Instead of using that dagger to protect the realm, he'll use it to kill his enemies. So as Alicent is trying to guide her son on how to rule,
Daughter,
You love me. I've made a huge mistake.
you imbecile.
and then the crowds enter the dragon pit in all its glory, far from the ruins that we saw in season 7 of Game of Thrones. Now, they chose the dragon pit because it's a symbol of Targaryen power, and they want to make it look like the entirety of the small folk approve of Aegon's coronation. Now, Otto smiles like a sly child with a pocket full of dead bird. Much like Tywin Lannister, he is a hand to a kid who is also his grandfather, and he assumes that he'll be able to control his cruel grandson. Rhaenys watching from the crowds is a bit like Arya Stark watching her dad's execution in another episode 9, this time of season 1 of the original Game of Thrones. Except Rhaenys' escape is a lot more empowering. So then the crowning ceremony begins, where Aegon is given the crown of Aegon I, and they also give him Aegon's sword, Blackfyre. That sword was also used by Maegor the Cruel, so they put it in sword storage until this ceremony. So Aegon II having the sword and crown of the Aegon is meant to legitimize him in the eyes of the public. Just like in the book, Kristen Cole places the crown on Aegon's head. Septon Eustace blessed Aegon II because the High Septon was out in Old Town. Aegon is crowned King of the Andals, the First Men, and the Rhoynar. And actually, we don't hear much about the Rhoynar, settled in the Riverlands right here. Now, do you remember the dream that Viserys had about his son being crowned king?
The dream was clearer than a memory, and I placed our son upon the Iron Throne as the bells of the Grand Sept tolled, and all the dragons roared as one.
All of that happens here. The bells even ring out in celebration of Aegon's coronation.
Aegon the King!
When Aegon gets applause, it transforms him. It's like Homelander at the end of season 3. This kid discovers that he digs the crowds and the praise. But then the beast under the floorboards rears its giant fire-breathing head as Rhaenys ruins Aegon's coronation party. The crowd panics, but look how calm Kristen Cole is. Now, I know these people see dragons a lot, but damn, dude.
I am dangerous.
Rhaenys has them right where she wants them. She could end this entire war before it starts with a single Dracarys, but instead of blasting them, she pauses. Maybe it's because Alicent shields her son, and Rhaenys recognizes a mother's love. So she flies away, probably to Evenfall to be with her dying husband. Now, none of that happens in the book at all, but it's cool.